Hi everyone! I'm back with another quick tutorial. Today I'll show you step by step how to draw these Mangekyou Sharingan eyes from Sasuke as realistically as possible. Quick note before we start. I'm not an expert and this isn't the correct way. Just my personal process and what works for me. As you can see, I started with a brown pencil to subtly outline my sketch. I'm using brown instead of black because it creates softer lines that are easier to blend later. Now I'm using a very light blue to color the white of the eye. And remember, the white part is never actually pure white. There are so many subtle undertones you need to account for. For this drawing, we're working primarily with primary colors. You really don't need many different shades to create a realistic result. As you can see, with the red, I'm putting special emphasis on the corners of the eye. This is to add more depth and to achieve that reddish undertone I'm looking for in this drawing. As you can see on screen, this is really just a process of patience, constantly rotating between colors, blue, red, yellow, then back to the beginning over and over. You emphasize whichever color is needed in each area to build up that three-dimensional look. The key is layering light, soft strokes so the color builds up gradually and evenly. Never press too hard, especially on those first layers, because you'll just end up with scratchy marks that are super hard to blend, and your colors won't mix smoothly. So like I keep saying, patience is everything here. Using the same brown pencil from earlier, I'm now defining the eyebrows and drawing individual hairs. If you want them to look realistic, here's the key. Don't make all the hairs go in the same direction or be the same length. Before you start drawing eyebrows, I really recommend studying some reference photos of real eyebrows to see how the hairs actually grow and behave. For the skin, we're using the same principle you already know: blue, red, and yellow. Since we're drawing an Asian character with very pale skin, you want to keep the overall tone more on the bluish and gray side. This gives that cooler, paler complexion. Now I'm taking a very light gray, almost white, and going over the sclera, which is the white part of the eye. If you don't have light gray, pure white works too. At this stage, you can actually press harder because these are our final layers. And that pressure helps all the colors blend and integrate together nicely. I'm also going back in with brown to deepen the shadows and adding little touches of blue and orange here and there. Let me give you what I think is the most important piece of advice for anyone learning to draw with colored pencils. Lose your fear of color. Seriously, stop being timid with it. Go absolutely wild with your color choices and don't be afraid to layer, and layer. I promise you, and I mean this, the more color you build up, the richer, more dimensional, and more realistic your final result will be. When I started, I was so afraid of ruining my drawings that I would barely press down, barely add any color. And guess what? They looked flat and lifeless. Here's the evidence. It wasn't until I started really committing and taking risks that my work began to improve. So please give yourself permission to experiment. Play with color theory, try combinations that seem weird. Use colors in places where they shouldn't go. See what happens. Because even if it turns out wrong, even if you end up with what you think is an ugly drawing, that's not a failure. That's information. That's you learning what works and what doesn't. I have entire sketchbooks filled with drawings that look terrible. But every single one of those bad drawings taught me something that made my next drawing better. That's how this works. You don't wake up one day magically good at art. You get there through practice, through experimentation, through making mistakes and learning from them, and through staying consistent even when you're frustrated. So be brave and remember rules, especially in art, are meant to be broken. Alright, back to the drawing. Here I'm using a black colored pencil to add the final details to the eyebrows. Make sure you keep your pencil nice and sharp. This is key for getting clean, professional-looking hair strokes. Mine actually wasn't as sharp as it should have been at this point, which is why you'll notice some of the hairs look a bit thick in places. I'm going back in with brown to build up and intensify those skin shadows. Let me know in the comments if this tutorial helped you, and tell me what other tutorials or drawings you'd like to see next. And if you give this a try, make sure to tag me in your artwork. I absolutely love seeing your results. Now with light gray, pressing a little harder, I'm going to saturate the skin more to get that pale look I want. The final step is adding the lashes, and you'll need a sharp black pencil for this. Understanding lash anatomy helps. Lashes grow in a curved arc following the shape of the eyelid. They radiate outward from the lash line in varying directions, not uniform or parallel. Upper lashes are noticeably longer and denser. Lower lashes are shorter and more sparse. When drawing, use quick strokes starting from the base and pulling outward, following the natural curve of the eye. And for the finishing touches, let's add some highlights to the waterline and the pupil to bring it to life. And here is the final result. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and found it helpful. If you did, please drop a like and subscribe for more. See you in the next one.